Hey everybody, welcome back to Divulgence. This is episode 67, whatever the fuck that means. But we have Habsburg Jawlly West coming back with us to discuss a lot of wild things surrounding Martine Rothblatt, who I've never even actually heard of until he brought it to my attention. So Habsburg, thanks for being here, man. How are you doing, my friend?
Hey, I'm doing great, dude. How are you?
Thanks so much for being here. I'm doing well. What made you? How did you stumble upon Martine Rothblatt? Like, obviously, we were just talking about pre-show that she's someone who is well known, but possibly by design might want to be someone who kind of flies under the radar. So that might be why a lot of people have never heard of her. But tell us about who she is and how you kind of stumbled upon into her and why you thought it'd be interesting, why you thought she'd be an interesting research topic.
Man, something, that I just, kind of only found out about in the last few years, and, realize just like how really integral this person, this figure is in terms of like technology, philosophy, kind of like this, transhumanist religion, the, transgender movement, kind of all converging in, this one person. And just that it was so mind blowing that I had never heard of her, that most people I knew had never heard of her. Anytime I bring, this person's name up, people are like, who? Who is this? And I mean, and it's not just because of, Terasem or, like the transhuman philosophy and all this stuff. But I mean, this is a person who is like, I mean, like her or not, I mean, this is a person who is unbelievably accomplished and who has invented or, been like the front person for, countless like inventions, innovations, and you're just like, wow. I mean, this one person has generated all of these things, and that we interact with and use all the time. And just like how would people not know who this is? It's just crazy. So I think maybe we should just like give an overview of who Martine is, and kind of go from there.
Sounds good, man. Yeah. I mean, I took a little look into her, but all I really know is that, American lawyer, author, and entrepreneur. And I get the impression that she's a CEO. And I get the impression that she's deep in with, AI and transhumanism and technology and whatnot. But tell us more, please.
Okay. So, and again, like what we were talking about in the pre-show, I want to be like as like politically neutral as possible and respectful. I'm going to refer to Martine Rothblatt as Martine. Use her preferred pronouns, and I think that that's like just for anybody in the audience, just it's not like a reflection of anything like personal or my like political views, but I think that this is like the best way to approach the topic, and to deal with this. Martine Rothblatt was born Martin Rothblatt, and
yes, that was my first fucking question. I was like, please tell me it started off as Martin. So yes. That is amazing.
I mean, all he did was add an E, but yeah. So Martine was born Martin Rothblatt in 1954 in Chicago, as the son of a dentist and a speech therapist. They moved to San Diego when Martine was really young, and that's where she grew up. And kind of couple interesting things about that is like, I don't know if this is like on your radar about dentistry, but a lot of dentists have been like, utilized, co-opted in intelligence operations. Things like, in intracranial implants, dental implants, and things like that. Can be used as like a intelligence device to transmit or receive information. This is going back decades. Thing that like CIA has been involved in dentistry. So that's kind of like an interesting thing to consider, that Martine's father was a dentist working in San Diego, which is kind of like the West Coast epicenter of naval operations, naval intelligence. To me, I think that that's a part of the story. That's kind of like the an invisible kind of aspect of what's going on here is that having the background. My guess is that her father, potentially mother, also were involved in in intelligence operations, utilizing dentistry, speech pathology, things like that. So there's that. When Martine, was a high achiever academically in high school, matriculated to UCLA, another place where there's, a long history of intelligence operations, MK, stuff like that. That's where, Jawlly West actually spent a, large portion of his career in their psychology department anyways. But yeah, Martine, as Martin at the time, eventually dropped out of UCLA and started traveling the world in his 20s, and went through Europe and Turkey, Iran, Kenya, and ended up in the Seychelles, which is like this really small, island archipelago off of the coast of Madagascar in the Indian Ocean. But it was the Seychelles. They had the and this is going back to, this would be like in the early 70s. The NASA satellite tracking station, in conjunction with the Air Force, was located on the Seychelles. And, this was kind of like, when, space satellites, first were coming into, existence. And this was like the main hub of tracking satellites and, the information that was being transmitted back and forth from, Earth to, the, extra stratospheric satellites. And Martin, whatever, ends up at this facility somehow in the Seychelles. Don't have any clue how she gained access to this facility. We got to assume that there were some pretty deep connection. I mean, this is a person can't just walk into, Air Force, NASA, satellite command center.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like how,
it's hard to, it's hard enough to get a job there. Never mind just
walking in as like a college dropout, just bumming around, Europe and, traveling the world. Like, who let Martine Rothblatt into this facility? Nobody knows. It's anybody's guess. But as like, her story goes, that, she was in this facility and had this epiphany about how, satellites would and satellite communications would unite the world. And this was in the early 70s. And this was, in the nascence of this, kind of technology. She ends up going back to school, getting a degree, and then going to law school at UCLA, ends up, focusing, her studies on, the legal aspects of satellite communications, actually wrote a business plan for, for Howard Hughes company, like Hughes Space and Communication.
Oh,
And,
wow.
I mean, like got involved with the Hughes Corporation, which is really embedded in the government. I don't know how much you know about Howard Hughes. It's kind of like,
yeah, I have a fairly big knowledge on Hughes for sure.
Yeah, and so that was kind of like one of this points of access for Rothblatt. They ended up like adopting her business plan, in incorporating it into like the Hughes Space Communications, and they built this gigantic satellite network, the HughesNet and everything. I mean, this is early on. Also wrote this kind of business plan for this Pan Am Sat, is Pan American satellite, which would be like a spot beam technology for Latin American countries. This was like in the late 70s, definitely when Iran Contra was going on,
Right.
talking about like setting up satellite communication systems specifically for these Latin American companies. It's actually something that was developed, and I mean, it sounds crazy, but this is like what turned into Univision, which is actually, of course, like the largest Spanish language, entertainment communications conglomerate on the planet. So pretty, auspicious stuff, like that's a big deal. And this was when, she was just like in law school, just, coming up with these ideas, I guess. But then when she graduated from law school, went to work at a DC law firm, Covington and Burling, who is like, really involved in some, big corporate law, representing, corporate interests, certainly over, human citizen interests. Like, for example, they defended manufacturers of opioids, I believe, including Purdue Pharma, against class action suits. People, these are like gigantic suits of, they kind of rock the pharmaceutical world, about opioids, and this is how it was all
Goliath cases, right? Yeah.
Right. I mean, but this is who Martine Rothblatt went to work for, the law firm that was representing, these kinds of firms. Also, they represented Monsanto in the glyphosate Roundup class action suits, like pretty anti-human stuff, like opioids, glyphosate, stuff that like, hasn't really, benefited humankind, of course. But ultimately, Rothblatt did work for NASA, and ended up working with to like invent the Geostar technology, which is like the satellite position tracking. This is like prior to GPS. This was like Geostar, and this is like definitely a thing that is used to like track people. I mean, we all use it to navigate and all this stuff. It's been incorporated into like modern GPS, which like the actual GPS system is operated by Space Force. Like it is the government. But yeah, like Martine Rothblatt, like for all intents and purposes, like invented the Geostar, or is credited as having invented this technology. And then ultimately founded like satellite radio, like Sirius satellite radio. Like she invented that.
Who did?
Martine Rothblatt. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's crazy. Like this person, like I said, is seriously accomplished. And this is like, it's interesting, because like from, I don't know, whatever point in time, she founded the company in 1990, but from whatever point in time, I mean, it's a standard feature in every automobile that is like, manufactured, right? Like that they have a satellite radio receiver, that they, when you get a new car, it comes with like a trial subscription. Like you're hooked into this satellite radio network, that's like a universal signal. Everybody is like getting the same programming, kind of like, just an aside, like, from our last conversation, they have a Grateful Dead channel on, Sirius satellite.
Of course.
Of course. But yeah, I mean, this was like, Rothblatt's invention was satellite radio. And then
there it is. Yeah, you Google it and there it is. It's not that I didn't believe you, but it's just like that. You used to remember the people that used to invent things, right? Like Edison and all that. Like, and now it's like you don't know who invents anything. Ford and Edison and Bell and Morse and Franklin and the Wright brothers and all that stuff.
Yeah, and nobody's ever heard of Martine Rothblatt, but I mean, it's it's a big thing, and so she ran the company for actually just a few years before she they went public. She kind of like exited out of like the corporate leadership, but actually started this. I mean, it's just like so much crazy stuff, but it started this Sky Station project with Alexander Haig, who was Reagan's Secretary of State. This is, to give internet access to like airplanes. And I mean, that technology too, using internet on airplanes. This was the Sky Station project. And then ultimately, she got kind of like she transitioned not only like, personally into in 1994, decided that she was actually a woman and, transitioned to
that far back, eh?
Yeah, real far back. Like when it was definitely not something that people were doing publicly, and especially somebody of like just such stature and prominence. It's pretty big deal. She is married to a woman named Bina. They have 4 children. One of them had like a very rare congenital lung disease. And she was a kid and, was pretty much like gonna die. And so Rothblatt started this company called United Therapeutics to develop these drugs for these genetic lung conditions, and it was really successful. And the crazy thing is that this company has turned into, I mean, it's a multi-billion-dollar company. It happens to be like based outside of DC, and in the middle of all the spooky stuff in the DC suburbs, but in Silver Spring, Maryland. But they have kind of like gotten into all kinds of different things that aren't like pharmaceutical based, but that are like biotech. So they are doing things like developing technologies to genetically modify pig organs for human transplant. So like these chimeric, organ transplants.
I don't like that. I don't like the idea of I mean, that's off topic, but I mean, I don't like the idea of using pig organs. I'm not a huge fan of that idea. It just doesn't seem right at all. Not not even from like an animal cruelty point of view. It's just like we should get some human valves and some human organs, people that donate them properly, right? Like
that's definitely like part of their thing too. I think the whole thing of like the trans species, organ transplant stuff. I mean, it's really creepy. And I don't know like what it is about, like like pigs that they translate so well, I guess, to humans. But like that's specifically what they focus on, is developing technologies for pig organs for transplant to humans. But then they've also gotten into like actually 3D printing human organs, specifically lungs, and they have done this successfully. They like have created like in vitro, like laboratory grown human lungs that are functional. And we this is just like what they've like disseminated into the public sphere. I mean, we don't know what they're really doing, or like what like underground labs she's actually running, and
right, yeah, with these billion-dollar companies, like never mind all the stuff that they're probably doing, but like just the stuff that like they would never talk about, like yeah, a lot of money gets put into R&D.
Right. I mean, and we have no idea. We were just talking about like press releases that they put out like 3 years ago saying, oh yeah, we've 3D printed human lungs, and we've got this technology, and we really don't know what they're up to. And it's if they're willing to divulge that kind of stuff, like it stands to reason that they're doing way bigger projects. And so it's like this is really serious, really like the cutting edge of kind of technology that is specifically intended to like lead to human immortality, like indefinite life extension, right? And it's when you think about it, it's like pretty vampiric. It's like it really is like the idea of using like external human life force to extend one's life.
Exactly.
And so this is kind of like getting into the whole kind of ethos and philosophy of like the transhumanism and the Terasem movement, like she calls it a trans religion. It's like this cult that Rothblatt founded in 2004. This is this is like over 20 years ago that that they made this kind of like philosophical religious movement based around, and we'll get into it briefly. I want to finish up the bio, but based around all of this creating infinite human life, eternal human existence, but so much of it is actually predicated in creating these like mind files, like these like simulacra, emulations of a human life, right? But just briefly finishing up on Rothblatt in 1997. Rothblatt led the International Bar Association's biopolitical project for the Universal Declaration on the Human Genome Project and Human Rights for the United Nations. It was adopted by UNESCO and the United Nations General Assembly in 1997 and 1998. So like, when you're talking about like the mapping the human genome and all this stuff, and on an international level, like how it's legally regulated, like Rothblatt wrote the structure for that. I mean, it's pretty mind-blowing. I mean, she's like the architect of, how this is handled, in a legal sense, which is also, really a big part of this transhumanist movement, and, what Rothblatt and these other people are involved in, are like the legal rights, not just of genomics, but like of artificial intelligences. And ultimately a big part of his advocacy for artificial intelligences to have the same rights as humans. And that's we'll get into that, but this is like, something that has really been like an undercurrent in society, and what we're essentially like being groomed to accept, right? Is that like, oh, artificial general intelligence, like it's, going to be something that, is self-generating, is, self-assembling, it's no different from any other kind of intelligence, right? So, this legal structure is a really big part of it. In 2017, Martine Rothblatt worked with David Hansen and Hansen Robotics, who was the company that made the Sophia robot, if you know about that.
Ooh, that sounds familiar.
Yeah, I mean, this is a big story a few years ago, and is this like, humanoid robot that rolled out.
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
So they made like a precursor to Sophia was actually this Bina 48, which is like a robotic head of Martine Rothblatt's wife, Bina. And it is like the creepiest thing you have ever seen. If you want to look it up, or if you want me to, screen share,
I think that's the picture I used for the episode. Yeah.
So that, I mean, and so, and they, did this whole thing of like uploading this mind file. It is so creepy, dude. They created this like mind file for Bina, to try to like emulate, simulate this person's like actual personality and all this stuff. So it's, and this is like, something that's going on like 10 years ago now, that they created this monster. And so it's like, it's really like really kind of like forward facing. I mean, this is like, what their vision of the future is in like a, real like rudimentary way. But Hansen Robotics is like involved in, like the real cutting edge of all this stuff. And, so it's a big part of, who they are. And the people that are involved in the Terasem network are like embedded in the corporation of Hansen Robotics, developing like the AI systems that run these robots and all this stuff. So it's really significant. So that's kind of like for all intents and purposes, like background on Martine Rothblatt and kind of like her achievements, to kind of give you an idea of just like, the significance of everything that she's invented and has been involved in. And so, maybe we want to like, if I can like maybe do some screen sharing and we can like start talking about Terasem. And so let me see, I'm going to try to figure out how I can get this up here. Are you seeing that?
Do you want to pull that up now?
Yeah.
Perfect. So yeah, I don't think I've ever even really heard of the Terasem movement.
So it's really interesting. There's sort of like two aspects of it. There's, the Terasem Movement Foundation, which is their like 501c3, and there is the like the actual like cult, the Terasem cult, which is, funded by the foundation. So, I mean, they have this legal structure where, it's this like, charitable, like nonprofit organization that is involved, with other things, but also this, their religion. So this is the website for the Terasem Movement Foundation. What their like main thing, and they're based out of Vermont.
Okay.
And you know what they're like doing is they're funding these programs for research and development of cryogenics, biotechnology, and cyber consciousness. But the main thing that they're working on is let me try to pull this up here, this lifenot.com. And this is what this is about, is like creating these mind files. So essentially like people uploading all of their kind of like life history, their personal thoughts, feelings, recordings, images, other data, a lot of things that people actually voluntarily do on social media. There's a big correlation between this stuff and using social media to generate these mind files. And the idea is to use this to like upload into a cloud to like create these like eternal like cyber entities that basically populate a cyber heaven. Seriously, this is like what
Wow.
this is their idea, and this is like they call it cyber resurrection, and it's I mean it's just like it's just unbelievable. They really believe that, but yeah. So making these mind clones, and self-aware digital beings able to think, reason, remember, and feel. A mind clone would be functionally identical to the living biological original mind, simply existing now in two different substrates, one digital and one flesh. Your mind clone and you will cast the same vote, love the same children, and receive the same jury duty summons. And when your physical body dies, you will live on forever as your mind clone. But again, and this idea that you will cast the same vote, that you will the same jury duty, like the idea that your mind clone will have the same legal rights as you
That's
have,
wild.
right?
That's wild.
It's I mean it really is. And this is dude, this is like something they probably put this up going back to, I'm thinking, at least 2011, if not earlier. This is an old website. This is something they've been working on for a really long time. And so this is, let's see, now did I just go back to that? So these
are you trying to share different things?
Yeah,
you just gotta click share this tab instead. It should say share this tab instead.
Okay. Well, let's go, and in that case, let's go ahead and check out this one. Oh, is this, it's up now, the what is Terasem, the
we still have the oh yeah, sorry, yeah, the gather for the 10th. Yeah, sorry, what is Terasem? Sorry.
All right, no, great. This is perfect. So so what let's see. What I think we should look at is, so this is, again, this is kind of like the other part of the organization, which is the actual religion, and they call this the trans religion for technical times, and basically this is their oh gosh, hang on a second. I want to pull it up, but they have this document. It's called the Truths of Terasem, and it's basically like their Bible. And if I mean, but it's unbelievable. And if you don't mind, I just kind of like to go through a little bit of that, because
sure, let's do it, man.
Like, it's crazy stuff. Let me see if I can pull this up real fast. Okay. Here we go. Sorry, give me just a second.
No worries, man. Do what you got to do.
thought I could get the full document off of their website, but I had to look on a third. Okay, here. Okay, this is it. Okay, let me share this with you then. Let's see. Are we sharing that now? Sorry, dude.
No, it's okay. No, we still have the come along, transcend.
Okay, let me see. How do I? Let me try this.
And then you could represent it.
Here we go. All right, thanks for bearing with me. I'm kind of new to doing this.
Hey, man, I appreciate your time, so don't apologize. We're happy to have you here, so don't worry about it.
Did we get that? Are we sharing that screen now?
You got it, man.
Okay, great. All right, perfect. All right, so now basically, this is their religious text, and it's all about who is Terasem. Terasem is a collective conscious dedicated to diversity, unity, and joyful immortality. So this sort of just gives like the overview, but once you get into this, they start talking about how Terasem, it basically is like the idea of Terasem is creating something that is like omniscient, omnipresent, omnipotent, and immortal. Essentially, like the idea that like God doesn't exist, and that Terasem is like creating God to like a future point. And so, all right. So here, Terasem means good lives are immortal and good fays are welcome in cyber heaven. Omniscience, omnipotence, and omnificence. Okay. Omniscience, omnipotence, and omnificence are what uniquely define God. So, daily experience tells us nothing meets these three criteria today or historically. In other words, they're saying God does not exist. If omniscience, omnipotence, and omnificence are what uniquely define God in this section right here, daily experience tells us nothing meets these three criteria today or historically. So God does not exist now. God has never existed. Earth's innocently suffering millions is proof that there is nothing omniscient, omnipotent, and omnificent today. So because there is suffering on Earth, there is no God. That is proof that there is no God. Future technology will enable Terasem to encompass the universe, thus becoming omniscient, omnipotent, and omnificent. In this way, we are building Terasem into God with smart atoms and conscious electrons. Nanotechnology and geoethics are the tools for expanding Terasem into universe-wide omniscience, omnipotence, and omnificence. So, like, they're going to use nanotech to create God. Expansion of Terasem is the purpose of life because this makes life good for all. Now, this is a really interesting, aspect of this whole document and their whole philosophy is, making life good, the elimination of evil, the elimination of suffering. And the idea is that, like, who is the arbiter? I read the whole thing the other day, and I mean, it's a confounding document to read because it is so crazy. But the idea over and over and over again, they're talking about like goodness and, like who gets to be in, like preserved their, immortally in their cyber heaven. But if God isn't if God doesn't exist, who is the arbiter of like gets, these privileges, who is good, like what terms do you have to like adhere to be chosen, and who qualifies, what is good, basically. I mean, their board of directors, I mean, I don't know, like I think what it really comes down to is that they deem themselves the arbiters of good and evil, and suffering, or whatever the inverse of suffering is, pleasure,
Right.
which is subjective, right? Like, I mean, one person may take pleasure in something that another person would consider suffering. So like the idea that that there is this standard that they would be the arbiter of, but that that this is what it is. They gather on the 10th day of each month at 10 o'clock. That's like their religious ceremonies. They're kind of like decentralized. They have different ashrams, different kind of like centers, but a lot of it is online based. And they have you can see every quarter they have these different festivals that are like vaguely based on like kind of Judeo-Christian sort of concepts, obligation to fast, things like that. They're quasi, reminiscent of things that we would recognize in kind of common religion. But basically, this whole part of the document, kind of outlines, the kind of logistics of how it works with their budgets and stuff. But they make a big point of that their religion is a trans religion, so it transcends religion. Keep your religion. Anybody of any religion can be, part of Terasem, and that's
okay.
right. But basically, here saying that theologically, the multiverse includes joyful immortality via data emulation of a diverse and united universe. So this is like the big thing, is the data emulation. By collecting all this data and uploading it, into the internet, the cloud, whatever, they're creating this. They talk about it, cyber heaven, whatever, but it's emulation, data emulation, this like simulation, so that's how unending life, the belief that once life arises it will last forever, is Terasem immortality theology. Never-ending creation, recycling, and growth is Terasem creation theology. I think therefore I am is at the core of Terasem reality theology. Teleological belief is in diversity, unity, and joyful immortality forms Terasem meaning of life theology. Euthenics, improving the well-being of extant life, is Terasem behavioral theology. Again, like, well-being, is a subjective concept. And again, they consider themselves the arbiter of that. Deontologically weighted decision-making is the basis of Terasem moral theology. But basically, that's what it's all about, is this, data emulation, and getting to, resurrection is promised to all good lives, which shall be copied as forever joyful data emulations. Copied lives are protected lives. Again, this, legal terminology of, protection, and, applying to copied lives, emulated, lives. Original lives can be replicated with the same fidelity as analog sounds can be digitally duplicated. So what they're saying is that, your emulated self, your digital self, is as like valid as your original self, because like a sound can be a sound can be digitally duplicated. The idea that like a recording is actually the same thing as the original sound, which it's not, right?
Right, man. Yeah.
But this, this is intrinsic to their philosophy. They're like, oh, the copy of you is the same as you. Paradise for posterity is assured by modifying data emulations to delete torturous aspects of lives. So again, this gets into this thing. So they're creating this cyber heaven, this paradise. They're going to eliminate all the bad things out of your life. So how can that be like a faithful reproduction, emulation of yourself? If they're going to delete all these things that, we largely are who we are because of suffering, because of the prospect of death and our response to, unpleasant things in life. Right. So if they're going to like upload you into, this, emulation, cyber paradise, but remove all of the bad things, and they're the arbiter of that, it really takes away like a large part of who we actually are. Right. Anyways, not to get too deep into the weeds, but introspection plus computation growing double exponentially and supported with self-replication yields ethical emulation and faithful resurrection. Emulated lives are existential lives. Duplication of a life makes it durable, not diminished. Eschatology doesn't apply because souls emerge from life's experiences and they transcend death via resurrection. But again, it's not resurrection, in the biblical sense. It's that like, oh, we're going to just like make this digital copy and you'll live forever. The weird part about it is that they're also really into cryogenics, and that's a big part of this document too. So there's so many contradictions here. Because if an emulated life is the exact same as an original life, then why would you need cryogenics? Why would they bother to to preserve a body if in fact your emulated self is the same as your original self? It's and who gets to be like cryogenically preserved and resurrected in a physical form? I mean, it's only there presumably like most elite people. But what they do for all, and also these mind files and these cryo files, they offer these services for free, and that's what their foundation, their charitable organization, actually funds, is these programs. So you don't have to pay for it. They just get to keep all of your data, but they will send you a mouthwash, and will you send it back in a vial, and they will like cryogenically preserve your genetic material. But they keep it. So that's pretty creepy.
Yeah, man.
I mean, it's just unbelievable. And I don't want to get like too like deep in all this, although I mean some of this is it's just crazy. Virtual reality accommodates all beings, including emulated past lives, migrated current lives, or cyber birthed new lives.
Sorry, repeat that one more time, please.
Virtual reality accommodates all beings, including emulated past lives. So like your mind file, migrated current lives, which, that's like how, I don't know, that's the cryogenic aspect, or cyber birthed new lives. Beings be because they can think on their own and empathize with other beings like humans. So not necessarily a human, it could be a completely like artificial entity, but because it can think on its own, allegedly, it's tantamount to a human. Emulated beings be because they think on their own and empathize with other beings like humans. Instantiating yourself into software form is like getting an education. Some things change and some things don't. Never fear. This is a creepy one. Never fear multiple versions of yourself.
They'll
all update each other just like a family does. So, I mean, that's just like schizophrenic, like multiple
Mad.
personalities, multiple versions of yourself, you know, an original version, an emulated version. They'll all like work to change one another. I mean, getting replicated lets the me of I feel some of the sense of the we of I. Synthesis, I mean, it's just a lot of like gobbledygook, really, but synthesize. This is a really creepy one. Synthesizing new lives via cyber birthing is as beautiful as fertilizing new lives via childbirthing. You know, it's just like, you know, yes, of course, you know, a virtual AI life is totally just as beautiful as you know, a natural born child. So, resurrected cyber lives will be in heaven because nasty realities won't be coded, but loved ones will. Again, like, who is the arbiter of what is a nasty reality? You know, what one person, you know, thinks is beautiful, another person thinks is ugly. But you know, they won't code your cyber life with anything that is, you know, ugly or painful or anything. Heaven is a hyper detailed emulation of actuality, virtually equivalent to a nirvanic naturality. Exponentiating information technology means data emulations of reality will be achieved very soon. Avoidable pain caused in emulated reality is as cruel as causing pain in original reality. Vicious people will not be cyber resurrected because bio-cyber ethics prescribes causing pain in data emulations of reality. Again, who is a vicious person? Who is you know, going to decide who is a vicious person? Effective immortality is achieved by dispersing throughout the galaxy and universe encoded data emulations of reality. Nature is honored by recreation of the past and immortal preservation of joy and happiness. I don't think so. Nature is nature. It's certainly not something that can be recreated. But anyways, again, like, this is, you know, it goes on and on and on. But you know, this is you know, this is kind of the deal. They talk about you know, like this, the headquarters of Terasem do not exist, but multiple strong places must exist for safekeeping of souls, which is, you know, basically like their data centers, their cryo centers. But there are, you know, this is like the list of places. Satellite Beach, Florida, which is where one of Martine Rothblatt's homes. DuPont Circle in DC, course, Belvedere Castle Overlook, which is in Central Park in New York, Bristol, Vermont, which is the location of one of their Terasem ashrams and also the headquarters of the foundation, and Magog, Quebec, where it's just on the other side of the border from Vermont, where they have another ashram.
So and what are these places? Real world places to meet exist at Terasem's first awakening. Oh, so these are meeting places?
These are meeting places, but also like, you know, like data storage facilities, presumably places where they are like storing people's genetic material,
right.
Potentially like actual cryogenically preserved bodies, things like that. So I mean, it's really creepy. And of course, you know, DuPont Circle and DC, I don't know that they specifically own property there. They may, or that's just like a meeting place, because they certainly don't own the Belvedere Castle in Central Park. But
right.
But these other properties, they do own, and like personal residences of Martine Rothblatt. And one of the things that I think is really interesting, and I don't know that much about this place. You're from Canada. You may know more about it than I do, but in Magog in Quebec, the city is like named after, you know, the, you know, this like biblical place, like from book. It predates the Book of Revelations, because evidently Magog is also the name of one of Noah's grandchildren. But in Revelations, the like apocalypse is like a battle fought between like the elect and the nations of Gog and Magog. So I don't think that that's something that is just by coincidence. Like there is some, deep, significance, in the name and why they chose that location, certainly. Yeah. So this is another interesting thing. They say, when is Terasem? Terasem arises whenever diversity, unity, and joyful immortality arise, which is soon in subjective time. Again, because they say that Terasem is God.
Right.
When is Terasem? God doesn't exist yet. Subjective time passes as fast as it is perceived, and faster with order than with chaos. Faster paths to joyful immortality are those which emphasize geoethical nanotechnology. Always with the nanotechnology. Always remember that time intervals vary directly with chaos and inversely with compounded order, and they're the arbiters of like what constitutes order. Also,
Right.
so they're very big on laws, legal structure, and people conforming to those and not later in the document it talks about how anarchy is bad, and people need to submit to the social order according to their ethos. But see that every way to accelerate Terasem is a way to reduce pain and suffering. Again, who's the arbiter of what constitutes pain and suffering? Terasem becomes omnipresent, omnipotent, and omniscient when it encompasses all consciousness and enough multiverse. Extension of intelligence to the cosmos clocks the arrival of multiversal Terasem. Realize Terasem is always with us, even in misfortune, for we are reborn in its bosom. Unconscious dead souls wait but a second for rebirth into Terasem. So again, it's like, why are they, it's another contradiction of people like dying and being reborn into it if your emulated self that they created from your mind file is already there. Like, they talk about cyber resurrection, but like, you don't have to be resurrected if you're already being emulated. There's just so many contradictions in this document. It's mind boggling. Like I said, trying to like read this was so frustrating the other night.
Wow.
But
yeah, man, that's wild. So,
but I think that this is like kind of a good overview. I don't want to go on. This maybe one last thing is their timeline. So the Julian calendar, adjusted for lapses in double exponential growth, marks progress towards universal Terasem. Before the year 2100, we will witness full cyberization of diverse united Earth life. Before the year 2200, we will witness self-replicating system unification of the Milky Way galaxy, which is basically like an artificial version of the galaxy, right? Self-replicating system. Before the year 2300, we'll witness complete emulation of the Milky Way galaxy. Before the year 2400, we will witness self-replicating system unification of the universe. Before the year 2500, we will witness complete emulation of the universe. And before the year 2600, we will witness joyful immortality via the control of cosmic physics.
Holy, they're making some serious bets here. They're placing some. I wonder what the Bet 365 odds are on this, man. Holy shit!
So yeah, I mean, what do you think about what we just read? I mean, is that like mind blowing? Is that
absolutely mind blowing? What? So you said it's kind of like their Bible, but what do they refer to it as?
The Truths of Terasem. And so there's 6 chapters, and each chapter has like 10 sub chapters. Everything is like in 10, base 10. And it's interesting that there's 6 chapters, like, Mark of the Beast 666, like,
right.
There's some correlation to, all of that in Revelation, I assume. But yeah, it just goes on, and a lot of it repeats itself, but they recite this entire document 30 times on the 10th day of every month at 10 o'clock a.m. I mean, I don't know how many hours that takes, but that's their like religious.
They recite this whole thing
30 times.
30 times every
30
how often?
Once a month.
Oh, fuck off, man. That's crazy. So real quick, I just want to, before we go through it anymore, I want to just show people a clip that, like, I don't know why it made me think of this, but like, this is actually totally what makes me think of when we read this document. So I'm going to pull your thing down real quick, and let's pull this up for people who used to remember Mad TV. Here we go.
Hello, E. Welcome to the set of my new movie. In my last hit movie, The Sixth Day, I was cloned. I had to get back my stolen identity. In the super big hit movie, Total Recall, I was in the future, and I had to get back my stolen identity. And then in my super smash hit, Eraser, I had to help Vanessa Williams get back the stolen identity. So now, my new movie is called Stolen Identity. Because Stolen Identity movies make so much money at the box office. Or actually, I'm calling it Stolen Identity 3. Because sequels make so much more, a lot of money. They do. Hey, who are you? I'm your clone. Who are you? My clone. And who am I? You're not you. Who are you if I'm not me? I'm you. I'm not me. Are you me or am I you? You're me. Hey, who's he? I'm you too. But I'm not me. Now you know the secret. Now you must die. Which one are you? Actually, me and my two clones joined forces because it turns out I'm really an angel. Then the CIA, they make a clone, but this one's a bad clone because he's in cahoots with the devil. So then me and my clones go to fight the devil clone. But then it turns out that he's the real me and I'm the clone. Then there's some scene in the museum. And then me and the CIA devil clone go to the lab. They make the clones. Then this happens. He's so cute. He's got your eyes. Of course he's got my eyes. He's my clone, baby. Go Gaga. Go Gaga, mama. I'm a clone, baby. Yeah. He's got to grow up and save the world. He's your clone, baby, too. No, he's not my clone, baby. Of course he is. You're the real me. That's what I'm trying to tell you. I'm not me. I'm you. I'm you. Oh, you're me. So, if you like clones, then go see Stolen Identity 3. And if you don't, then go eat at Planet Hollywood. Then go see the movie afterwards anyway. So it makes lots of money.
So that's what I thought of. That's what I thought of when you were reading that freaking document, man. Yeah. Like clones and stolen identities and cyber identities and all this shit, man.
Well, I mean, it really is something that has been, really embedded in all of these Hollywood narratives, obviously by design. It is interesting because Schwarzenegger, has been in all these, movies that really are talking about this, and what is really the difference between Terasem and Skynet? If they're saying that they're basically building something that is omniscient, omnipresent, omnipotent, they're talking about Skynet, right? And Total Recall. I mean, there's definitely a reason that Schwarzenegger's been in all the movies that are about all this. He's a creepy dude, that's for sure.
You think so, eh?
Well, I mean, have you ever seen the clip of him talking about smoking cigars? It's the funniest thing ever. Like the real clip.
No.
I mean, this is kind of like a Divulgence, but man, you should pull that up. The Arnold Schwarzenegger stogie. It is hilarious. But he's because in that clip you showed, he's smoking the cigar. The clone has the cigar, but like Schwarzenegger's like obsessed with cigars, and he's such a weird, creepy dude.
Okay, I think this must be it.
It's hilarious.
It's an older clip, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I got it. Here we go. Before we get back to our regular programming, here's a
nice little interlude, comedy interlude.
A little more Arnold
after
for
dinner.
you.
Everyone ought to have, because after dinner, everyone ought to have a cigar. So I tried it. Well, the rest is history. I'm still smoking stogies. I love it. And he introduced me to something really good. And I know now the next question. Knowing you, being the interviewer that you are, digging in deep all the time, you will say now, what does your wife think about that? Let me ask you something. When my wife's father has introduced me to stogies, what is she going to say? She's not going to say my father made a mistake, because her father never makes a mistake. So therefore, it is okay. I can smoke stogies around her. I can smoke stogies in my house. First of all, because her father introduced me to stogies. And second of all, because I'm a stud. I'm ballsy. I don't take no shit from anyone. I smoke my stogie anywhere I want. I don't have to find a hideout place like you.
What the hell?
He's just such a weird, creepy dude.
Yeah, that is weird. That's a weird one.
Anyways, but yeah, no, this is actually a good transition though, because they in addition to like all the kind of embedded programming and so much of like the narrative Hollywood films, they've also made like their own films. Terasem has made like full-length feature films, but also Martine Rothblatt executive produced Ray Kurzweil's film, The Singularity is Near, from I think 2010. And maybe we should, talk about Ray Kurzweil a little bit. Do you know anything about him?
Probably not as much as you, but I'm familiar. Let's look it up right here.
They're like really deeply involved
he's
in
into computers and stuff, right? He's a computer
technician. He's a mega billionaire. He invented like all like the electronic keyboard, all of this musical technology. He's also a major deadhead, of course.
Come on.
But
look at it with suspenders like those.
Oh yeah, he's also now like
probably Jerry Garcia suspenders. He's probably got a bunch of Jerry Garcia ties in his closet.
Yeah, definitely. He actually keeps a photograph of Jerry Garcia on his desk, like in his office. But but he is he's the guy who came up with the term the singularity. And like the concept that like man will fully merge with machine as being the singularity, and that by his estimation, it will happen by the year 2045. But he's like the top futurist or whatever, in the world. And he's kind of the ringleader of all this, and really close with Martine Rothblatt. He's written all these books. The Singularity is Near, The Singularity is Nearer, blah, blah. But they made a film together.
Sequels make more money, buddy, just like Arnold said, right?
Exactly. But they made this movie, and we should definitely play the trailer of it at a certain point. But basically part of it is like documentary with interviews, and part of it is it like cuts back and forth to like a narrative, and in the narrative part, it's about like Kurzweil's like cyber self, who is a woman, which obviously like speaks to this whole thing. Martine Rothblatt, we didn't really talk about it, but wrote the manifesto from transgender to transhuman, and the essence of it is that by socially embracing transgenderism, it's like onboarding process into transhumanism. Like once we, abolish the apartheid of sex, which is the term that Rothblatt uses, that, we, won't have the same like biases against, like physical bodies, physical consciousness, artificial intelligence, cyber, emulations, what have you. And so, in the film, Kurzweil's like avatar or like cyber self is this this female character named Ramona, and it's real weird. Like on his blog, he's written this whole life history of Ramona, whose like father is in like a rock band that opened for the Grateful Dead, of course.
Oh,
yeah, seriously. But that basically, the film, the narrative part like tracks this evolution of this Ramona avatar as it becomes like more and more complex, and ultimately, goes through this like process of like passing this Turing test, and that, in the future that they have these like advisory panels of, to evaluate these Turing tests. They basically determine that, this, Android AI, whatever, Ramona is human because, is equivalent to a human because it's passed this Turing test. And then, like the narrative gets into like advocating for her legal rights. And they go to like the Supreme Court and actually end up winning the case, to determine that as an android that has passed the Turing test is every bit as human as any like natural born human, and therefore entitled to all rights that humans enjoy. And who is the lawyer in the movie who represents this, like android avatar? Alan Dershowitz. Who was Jeffrey Epstein's lawyer. No joke. I mean, he's like all in the movie, but the film, the interview, the documentary part, it's all of these people that Epstein was funding. Marvin Minsky, who was like known to be at Jeffrey Epstein's island, like many times. He is the professor at MIT who's considered the father of AI. He features really prominently in this film. Also Bill Joy, who's, Sun Microsystems, who is, also a big time Jeffrey Epstein associate. I mean, there's the overlaps between, Kurzweil, Rothblatt, and the Epstein network. They're just, manyfold. But like the movie is just bizarre because there are, so many of these characters that are prominent that were really close to Epstein. And do you want to pull up actually the trailer for that? It's or I think I've got it on here if I can.
Is it the 3 minute and 14 second?
Yeah, is that okay? Can you show that?
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's just a trailer. We're discussing it. So
yeah, it'd give people a really good idea of kind of like what all this is.
Yeah, we'll play some of this.
Yeah, that's it.
Do I think the singularity is near?
I think you can make an argument that the singularity has already started.
Is the singularity near? Or some changes that are fantastically big and fantastically fast are coming our way?
I do see the future as an explosion of human knowledge. It'll be an explosion of things like music and art and science and engineering. The law of accelerating returns says that information technology grows exponentially.
The singularity is the point where our technology and ourselves are no longer two different things.
Everything, from communications to health to energy, is going to transform itself. Change is not a constant. It's actually getting faster and faster.
I'm gonna make you real one day.
Oh, you're looking better and better. This artificial intelligence we're creating is not coming from Mars to invade us. We are the human machine civilization. It is really part of who we are.
Tell me a bit about growing up.
Well, I started out as a stick figure.
I'm afraid the protocol in this situation is immediate shutdown of you.
Listen, I am a conscious machine. Terminating me would be murder.
Clearly, she is just a machine.
Your Honor, this is fleshism, pure and simple. Human beings have a spirit. They can develop a conscience.
The respirocyte is an artificial red blood cell. You would probably be able to breathe without breathing for about 4 hours.
The ability to reprogram the information processes underlying biology will enable us within 10 or 15 years to overcome cancer, heart disease, stop and reverse aging.
Nanorobots could be used to record all the traffic to get a complete picture of the state of your brain.
So we could back up our brains.
In principle, that's possible, yes.
And that could also provide virtual reality from within the nervous system.
Places that don't exist in physical space, but that people can inhabit and meet and do things that humans do. The wonderful thing is, reality's just gotten a lot bigger.
The concept of one mind, one body will be obsolete.
That's Martine Rothblatt.
You can actually change your body to go with a particular environment, and it'll really feel like we're in that environment.
I can't believe it. Correlated nanofile replications all over the place and perfectly spaced.
A large number of nanorobots replicate themselves, and when there's enough of them, they suddenly turn to an attack phase.
Technology has always been a double-edged sword.
Getting rid of the idea of dying. Expand the definition of being human.
That's the nature of wanting to emotions.
People are mechanical.
About this human-robot relationship.
For biomedical instrumentation and intervention, remaking
We are going to become profoundly different.
Lots of new problems.
we're all
That's probably enough. But,
To destroy the world.
it sort of like exemplifies and encapsulates like what we've been saying.
It can't happen.
Interesting. I'm curious as to how many of those people Epstein was palling around with, other than just Dershowitz.
Marvin Minsky specifically.
Okay.
He's like considered the father of AI. He's a big part of the film, and there's like the real creepy picture of him going like this. Him and Epstein. Epstein's in the Harvard sweatshirt, and Minsky's doing.
I think I've seen that.
It's so creepy, but yeah, they were like really, really tight, and he is like literally considered the father of AI. I mean, I'm sure Epstein had a relationship with Kurzweil. I'm sure Epstein had a relationship with Martine Rothblatt. Like it's almost inconceivable that they did.
He loved his tech. He loved his tech. He loved his science. He wanted. I mean, he was I don't want to say obviously, but it seems obvious. But he was very likely, most likely, an agent of intelligence to at least one, likely more agencies. He had his hands in all the pots, from tech to Hollywood to politics. I think even like music and other different arts, of course. And then, of course, the seedy underworld of, like prostitution and sex trade and probably drugs and so many other things.
Right. And, I mean, so many, it's all completely intertwined. And of course, he was like getting all of these people in the tech world, not just on his team by funding them, but also by, trafficking human beings, particularly children, to them. And that's, how he, had leverage to guide their research. And, like you said, I mean, he wasn't, acting of his own accord in so many ways. He was an agent of, this larger overstructure. There's certainly like manifests in, one intelligence network or the other, but it's really all the same, and yeah, I think that's, what this was really all about, was that, he was, Epstein was really embedded in this, manufacture of this, Terasem cyber world. Whether or not he was directly funding Terasem, I'm sure he probably did give them money. They don't have to disclose that. But he like tangentially these like, technologies that they're using and that they're promoting, he was absolutely involved in. One of the things that he was funding is a AI AGI that was developed by it's called OpenCog, and Epstein was funding it directly, and that was being developed by a guy named Ben Goertzel, who's a real creepy guy, who is also like the chief scientific officer or whatever of Hanson Robotics, who made the Bina robot, right? And he is like one of the like very like high-ranking members of Terasem, Ben Goertzel. He's on the editorial committee of their like peer-reviewed publication. It's called the Journal of Personal Cyber Consciousness. And like Epstein was directly funding him, and that OpenCog, the AI that Goertzel developed with funding from Jeffrey Epstein, is like being used actively even now to run the Hanson Robotics robots. So like Sophia, Bina, whatever, they've got like the newer stuff is operating on Epstein funded AI models. So like that's how close they are, to this. How involved Epstein is with this. So this guy Goertzel is on the editorial committee. This would be like another, and they're all involved with. It was the formerly it's called the World Transhumanist Society, which was started by a guy named Nick Bostrom. But they're all, and now it's called Humanity Plus. And all of these characters are all, involved with the board of directors and running that organization. Rothblatt, Goertzel, this guy named William Sims Bainbridge, who is, he's the chief of the head of the editorial staff, the editorial committee for Terasem's journal. And have you ever heard of William Sims Bainbridge?
Oh, yeah, I think so.
I mean, he's like that one of the heads of the national, the National Science Foundation. I mean, he's a sociologist, whatever, blah, blah, futurist, but he's really embedded in this network. And one of the really interesting things about him is he was, allegedly like not a member, but like he was, like chronicling the story of the Process Church of the Final Judgment. Do you know anything about the Process Church?
I mean, yeah, I've heard of that. Yeah.
And he wrote this whole book about them, kind of like whitewashing, their whole, history, and like they are, like this would be like a great subject for a whole other episode. But the Process Church was like really instrumental in, like all these, events like in the 60s and 70s. They were an offshoot of Scientology, and they, like Charles Manson was part of the process. Like,
really? Okay. So the Process Church of Final Judgment?
Process Church of the Final Judgment.
Gotcha.
And so this is another like, cult. And all these cults really are like the idea here is really that all these cults are kind of like interwoven into the same fabric. And, all these people are kind of, doing the same thing. And it's all about like, becoming God, becoming immortal, being like, the arbiter of the future of humanity. Right. But yeah, Bainbridge was deeply involved with the Process Church and is, one of the like highest ranking members in Terasem. So you've got some like really, seriously nefarious crossovers between the Process, Epstein, Terasem. I mean, there's just like this, kind of like infinite level of connectivity between, all this dark stuff. and these people that believe that they are building God, that God doesn't exist and that they're building God. So I think that's kind of what's really at the core of all of this. I guess maybe if I could get into like one, last really weird thing about all this.
Sounds good, man.
So there are really a lot of overlaps and connections with Rothblatt and her network and the Kardashians. Like, it's really weird, and it kind of makes sense, when you think about, like, okay, if Martine Rothblatt is actually the most powerful transgender person in the world, who's the most famous transgender person in the world? Obviously, Caitlyn Jenner, Bruce Jenner, right?
Yep.
Like, obviously, who is married to Kris Jenner. Kris Jenner, or I think that's what she still goes by. I don't know. Kris Kardashian. Like, she grew up in San Diego. She's like born about a year after Rothblatt, and they grew up like in the same area. I know it sounds crazy. I really wonder if Rothblatt's father might have been Kris Jenner's dentist. Just saying, and but they're like exactly the same age, from the same place, and of course, like the transgender connection with Bruce Jenner. There's no way that like Caitlyn Jenner and Martine Rothblatt aren't connected to some degree. They have to be. But the newest member of the board of directors of Terasem, going back several years, they appointed him like in 2019 or something, is a guy named D.A. Wallach. And he is he's a musician that's now like into like crypto and all this. He came from Harvard. He's real spooky. And he's a young guy, and his like music career was launched by Kanye West, who was Kris Jenner's son-in-law, obviously. Also this guy D.A. Wallach, like on his Instagram, here I can pull this up if I can share this. Let's see. Sorry, I'm not good at this part.
Don't worry about it, brother.
Share screen. There we go. So this is D.A. Wallach, and he is like the newest member of the board of directors of Terasem, and this is Kris Jenner's current boyfriend.
What?
Yeah. Oh yeah. They're bros. Lovely chats with at Gillespie Mark, at Corey Gamble, at Scooter Braun and Ben. And this was from 2017. So he's been connected. And this was when Kanye West would have been like married to Kim Kardashian.
Yeah, exactly.
And, they're like hanging out. Kanye West is a big fan of Ray Kurzweil. And actually,
really?
Big time. And there's actually an article. Let me see if I can pull this up. Where is that? Oh, here. I got it.
Also, just a side thought. It's interesting how she's got the Terasem movement, and then Ghislaine Maxwell had the Terramar project,
which goes into like a whole other thing, because the Terasem organization is really involved in, do you know what seasteading is? It's this,
seasteading?
Seasteading. It's this movement to create like autonomous colonies at sea. And like Terasem is really involved in it. Peter Thiel gave them all this money, 10 or more years ago. He's really involved in it. And yeah, I think that there's definitely a connection between this Terramar organization and the seasteading. It's, this idea of colonizing, putting like human colonies out at sea. And it's really creepy, with the Terasem. I meant to get into this. There's a great video on YouTube of, here, let me share this too. But there's a great video on YouTube of, Martine Rothblatt's son, Gabriel, who is like, one of the heads of Terasem. And he's talking at the seasteading, organization like conference in 2012, and he's talking about that Terasem wants to make these seasteading colonies to do things like to they call it farming, like PHARMING, basically genetically modifying animals to produce like drugs, and like cloning them. I mean, this is like what they're wanting to do, out on these sea colonies that are like not subject to, because of like maritime law, they're not subject to any kind of like terrestrial, national, laws. They would be like these legally autonomous units where they could do all kinds of weird stuff. Presumably they actually exist. And yeah, that's a big thing. I think there's a big crossover, some kind of connection between seasteading and Terramar. Terramar literally means like land of the sea, right? In Latin. So I think that there's another like interlock there. But yeah, you see this, like Kanye West is watching a TED talk from the Google executive.
Ridiculous, man. Like, I just want to add, like, it's so funny, like how I could be wrong, but I really don't think like Hollywood and rock and roll and pop and celebrities was like this back in like the 50s, 60s, 70s, maybe not even the 80s. But like, just because Kanye West, to some people, to a lot of people, sure, is a really popular rapper and he's influential and he's a nutcase and people like that and whatever. Why do we have to give a shit about what he says about super intelligence and computers and whatever the fuck's going to happen in year 2030 or 2045? Like, I think that's ridiculous. Like, that's a huge portion of Twitter and social media is these celebrities who like feel like it seems to be a huge pattern. Like, I know a lot of people are getting more into politics lately, but it seems like celebrities and well-known people, like athletes even or whatever, just feel like they have this card where it's like, okay, I could show this card and I could jump in the conversation and everyone, they expect everyone to respect everything what they say, and news outlets expect it to be fucking news. Like, it's something like, oh, Kanye's an expert on supercomputers, so we better know about what he's listening to and what TED Talks he's been watching.
Well, I think it's really interesting because like it goes to the nature of like what is an influencer and what these like, industries like at their real core really are. I mean, I think that they are about like, this stuff really is about disseminating, ideas and viewpoints and, by making like, music, by making films, by, things where also like subliminally things can be embedded, ideas and feelings and things like that. It creates like an emotional attachment and a reverence that people have for these, public figures. And like you said, like, who are these people? Like, what qualifies them? But they've been chosen, and they're the ones who are like delivering this stuff. And, so I think that he's one of them. And, he's like come out and become like controversial and he got canceled and this and that. But I think that that's, really like part of this, that, it's like a dialectic that, one side versus the other really like, coming to a common, nexus point. How did the Kardashians become famous, right? Like they were reality TV stars. Why were they reality TV stars? Why did anybody even know the name Kardashian? It was because Robert Kardashian was the lawyer for OJ. Who was his co-counsel? Alan Dershowitz. Alan Dershowitz was his co-counsel representing OJ Simpson. So, I mean, it's like there's, again, like infinite interconnectedness between all of these people. Kardashian in Armenian, it actually translates to mason, stonemason.
Oh, fuck. Oh.
Cannot make that up. It's totally true. Yeah, and Kourtney Kardashian named her child Mason. Mason Kardashian.
Right.
Mason.
So it's Mason. Oh my God.
Yeah. So I mean, there's, this is what we're really looking at. So why is it, something of significance to like talk about, Kanye West? Well, like, look, he's the one who, discovered, this musical talent at Harvard, who was at Harvard with Mark Zuckerberg, by the way, D.A. Wallach. They were there together, presumably know each other. I have to imagine, they're like these networks. Kanye West just discovers him, now he becomes this like major figure in crypto. That like Ripple stablecoin is one of his big investments. And he's on the board of directors of Terasem. Like, all of it's, this, it's like the whole thing. It's a big club and we ain't in it, like that's what it really amounts to. It's like all these people are in the club, including the people that like, quote unquote, get canceled. Like Kanye West, like, he's like, he's a character. He's performing a role, for these people. And, that's what I believe. And that's why I think it's really interesting to consider how many ways, that whole, celebrity reality show, entertainment, whole thing intersects with these, technology, futurist, AI, robotics people. Like they're really hand in hand. And, who knows? I mean, the other weird thing about Kanye West, like, do you remember he got kicked off of Twitter in 2022 for posting that symbol of the like swastika inside of the Star of David?
Is that why he got kicked off? Yeah.
That's why he got kicked off.
I remember when he did that.
And that symbol,
wait a minute, sorry to cut you off, but like isn't that the symbol of like one thing I could think of is Raelians or whatever?
Exactly. Okay, yeah, exactly, you're on it. So the Raelian cult, like, and there are these people, they believe that their leader, this Rael guy, is
that guy was a fucking nut too, man.
Oh,
but he was smart. He knew how to fucking make a cult and make a bunch of fucking money and then fuck off, right?
But I think it's part of the same Terasem network. And the Raelians, they have this company. It's called, I can't think of it now. Maybe we can look it up. But they have a company that is like involved in human cloning. Like that's
right. That was one of their big things, right? Because weren't they saying at one point that we've got the human clone, and it was a big
exactly. So all of these cults just happen to be involved.
Clonade.
Clonade. That's it. Exactly. Clonade. So
clone, like what a bunty soap name for a company. Clonade.
But that's it, right? Like, they're cloning humans. Martine Rothblatt is cloning, 3D printing organs. Like, why are all these cults, doing that kind of stuff? Like, it's all the same cult, as far as I'm concerned. And Kanye West is like posting, their, symbol, which, ramps up this drama of his whole narrative. He gets kicked off of Twitter, blah, blah. But like, that wasn't just some random symbol, that was like very deliberately, it was, this Raelian symbol. He's very, much like, a proponent of Ray Kurzweil. Like, it all is, again, like there's this common nexus point with all of this. And it's this, transhumanism. So
wait a minute, did he post this symbol or did
that's
he
exactly
actually?
what he posted. And Elon Musk, it was like right after he took over Twitter, kicked him off because he said it was like a hate speech.
I thought it was actually more of, I mean, I'm sure this symbol comes in other forms, but I thought it was like straight up the two symbols almost like over each other, but like the Nazi symbol, or sorry, the swastika was smaller, so they can like differentiate the two. But yeah,
no, it was literally that.
This one, wow,
it was literally that he posted that caused that whole controversy, and that was the thing. I mean, very few people. Everybody was talking about it, but nobody was really talking about like, dude, that's the symbol for this cult, like very much, overtly, like that's what it is. It's, it's not like, it's not a swastika with the Star of David. It is the Raelian symbol that he posted. So yeah, that's it.
Oh, so he took a photo of a fucking screen, and it was, wow, Jesus Christ.
Right? So I mean, like it's just it's so weird. But of course they say like in the after posting a Star of David swastika,
yeah, exactly.
They don't say, oh, the symbol of the Raelian cult that clones humans.
Yeah, exactly.
So I
mean, he was going pretty nutty around that time.
But what does that even mean? Nutty, not nutty.
But you know what? Yeah, you know what? You're right. After I said that, I kind of caught myself and I thought, it doesn't really matter, right? When you're looking into like freedom of speech and whatnot, like, and what if he? I mean, yeah, what if he did post it as seeing it as the Star of David and the swastika? I mean, the swastika itself has been seen as a symbol of peace and other things. And then on the other hand, well, what if he was being anti-Semitic or something about it? I mean, like it just goes into free speech, right?
Right. And
a lot of it anyways, a lot of it.
But I think that, that was like a very like deliberate thing to seed a narrative, and we've seen like how that has like spun out over the last 3 years now, right? Free speech, this group is to blame for everything, this, blah blah, Hitler is cool. Like, I mean, this is really like blown up in the the zeitgeist and the popular culture, right? And the really interesting thing about it to me is that he used that symbol. And, maybe he didn't know what it was, but I think if he knows about Ray Kurzweil and is like connected, with these networks that are like immediately like connected with the board of directors of Terasem, like he knows what that symbol means. Like he knows what the Raelian cult is. Like that's firmly what I think. And I think that like that was really deliberate. And I feel like it's kind of been like a real life reality TV show that we've been watching with him, with so many of these people, like that whole thing, with him on Alex Jones, like, that's when that, whole narrative kind of like really popped off. Like
when he's wearing the covering his face and all that. And he's getting mixed up with Nick Fuentes and
yeah, it's unbelievable. It's like watching a movie, and I think that that's really what it is. Like, we're kind of watching a movie, and at a certain point, like the whole idea of Terasem, that if like the emulation is real life, like it's the same thing as this. Like, what's TV and what's reality? What's part of the this fabrication, this simulation, what's real, like I think that it's blurring the lines, breaking down those boundaries. Like we don't know who's like an actor going off of kind of a script and, who's like really acting of their own accord. And that's kind of like this concept of this, cyber emulation. Like, we've broken down those boundaries. We don't know the difference anymore. So the emulation is the reality. Reality is an emulation. Like we don't know.
That's true, man.
So
that's what I think about all the time. Like just the way some of these people act and when they act and how they act. It's like, what's going on, man? What's going on in this world?
Dude, and why are they all like some, however many degrees of separation from Jeffrey Epstein? I mean, like,
right? Yeah. That's
you don't have to pull that thread too far, and it's just like, oh, there he is. So, yeah, I don't know, man. I just like these, these are all the things I'm just like, I'm glad you thought that this was like a topic that was worthy of discussion, because like, it branches out to so many different places. And, I feel like, again, it was like one of these things where I, was only able to like scratch the surface. And, even in my own research, it was frustrating because I'm like, man, there are too many things for me to read about this stuff and these people and this network. Like, it just goes too deep, but the idea that a lot of people don't know anything about them and, aren't talking about it. Like it's really cool to be able to like get a conversation going. So.
Well, hey man, I appreciate your time, and I appreciate when you got something and you come on and you want to talk. So, yeah, man. Thanks for teaching us all about this subject. I didn't know anything about Martine Rothblatt, so I definitely learned a fuck ton today. So yeah, man. Whenever you got something cooking, you just let me know. It'd be a pleasure to bring you back, man. Is there anything you want to share before we go? Anywhere you want to direct people to find you? Anything like that?
I have a Twitter account. It's Habsburg Jawlly West. It's the at accountable to me, and I share stuff on there. Some of it's like goofy, some of it's like serious, like this stuff, but that's kind of where I'm at. And yeah, man, I just appreciate you like having me on here. This is one of these things again where like just getting the name Martine Rothblatt out and Terasem out there and getting people to realize like how big of a deal this really is, and like how these are the people that are really like crafting the future, and that's what they intend to do, and that they don't really like humanity as it is, and don't believe that that there's a God, or that that's who created us in any way, and that they are God, or will or are in the process of becoming God. And
right,
that's like a big takeaway there, so
yeah, true that, man. Well, until next time, thanks again for coming on, Jawlly West. This is a lot of fun. I learned a lot. Thanks to everyone in the audience, the listeners, everyone in the chat. Make sure to subscribe to Divulgence Podcast on YouTube. We've got the Rumble account back up and running, so you can go follow there. We'll be live streaming on YouTube, Rumble, and the Divulgence Twitter moving forward. So there's a couple news items. But yeah, check out the show, share it, enjoy. Yeah, thanks everyone for being here, and thanks for Habsburg Jawlly